children now!
Stop killing children now!
Stop killing Iraqis now!
Stop killing Iraqis now!
Stop killing Iraqis now!
Stop killing Iraqis now!
U.S. sanctions have to go!
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 Stop killing Iraqis now!
Stop killing Iraqis now!
Please stop killing Iraqis now!
Please stop killing Iraqis now!
Please stop killing children 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 now!
Stop killing children now!
Please stop killing children now!
I'm Mark Bruzonsky. I'm your host for this program, Mideast Realities. I'm sorry I'm losing my voice out here at the demonstration outside of the White House. I'm going to ask another person who works with Mideast Realities, Omar Kura, who's a Palestinian studying here at American University, and he'll be interviewing a number of people here at the demonstration, talking to them about why they've come, about what their views are, about how they feel about American policy. Thank you for watching the program.
Sanctions make children die!
Sanctions make children die!
Stop killing the children now!
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 Stop killing the children now! U.S. sanctions got to go!
U.S. sanctions got to go!
Hi, I am Omar Kura. This is Mideast Realities. We're standing in front of the White House. There's a demonstration taking place. We're going to be interviewing some people.
I am horrified, embarrassed, ashamed, deeply distressed by the behavior of my government. To bomb the people, starve them for 7 years, and bomb them a little bit among those 7 years and threaten to massively bomb them again is unbelievably cruel, ineffective, stupid. It's grotesque. I have to do as much as I can to urge the people in this country to tell the government, stop it.
How do you feel about American policy in general toward the Middle East?
It stinks. They dump weapons in, sell them in huge numbers, both before and after 1991, but more after 1991, to all the other countries in the region, especially Israel. How in the world can you expect that it won't be a hotbed of trouble when you pour in weapons like that? It's insane.
U.S. sanctions have to go! U.S. sanctions have to go!
Hi, sir. Could you tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about your background?
You bet. I'm Arnold Peterson. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a psychologist by profession. I've been a member of Veterans for Peace. My primary goal is to help abolish wars. And the fundamental notion is that violence shouldn't be used, whether it's against children or against adults. It's no different. This was just another occasion when Veterans of Peace wanted to be a part of concern for the Iraqi people. And we're certainly against the President of the United States formulating plans to go to war. That's not going to lead to anything but more harm than good.
How do you feel about American policy in general toward the Middle East?
I think that the United States would do better to work through the United Nations and empower the United Nations to bring better regulation and control throughout the Middle East.
What needs to be done in order to bring about a change in U.S. foreign policy toward the Middle East?
I think U.S. policy is controlled by corporate military America, and politicians then fit into the plan. Politicians have to learn to stand up for the basic rights of people, whether in the United States or around the world. And so how to change that, I don't know. Short of protesting the use of violence, use of war as a means of resolving human problems.
A cable around the area, and we also send information. Why are you here today?
Why am I here today? I'm here to protest any use of military action in Iraq. As it is, civilians are dying. Every month, 450,000 children are dying due to malnutrition. 450,000 children. Are the Iraqi children not humans? Why is it that nobody gives a damn about the Iraqi children? The hospitals don't have enough medicine. The children don't have enough to eat. The adults don't have enough to eat. And what is this for? Why are we killing more Iraqis? I'm very concerned. And if the U.S. bombs another time, that's only going to kill everybody else who is almost dead with these UN sanctions.
How do you feel about American foreign policy toward the Middle East in general?
Oh, it's definitely biased. Here the U.S. is trying to bomb Iraq because, as they allegedly say, that we're not letting them into sites that might have biological warfares. But when it comes to Israel, and when they are supposed to move out and give more land to the Palestinians, according to a UN resolution, they don't do that. They don't do that. They only target Iraqis. Why is that? There is a double standard here, and we want to know why. The whole Middle East wants to know why.
How do you feel about the Arab governments and their role in this crisis and previous crises?
Right now, I could say that I'm very much, I really admire President Hosni Mubarak for standing firm against any military strike, although I would want more of a force from the Gulf countries. They need to stand a little firmer and say, no, we won't allow you to use any of the U.S. bases there, and those are brothers and sisters of us and human beings who could die.
How do you feel about the fact that 7 or 8 years ago these countries were in a coalition with the United States when they forced Iraq out of Kuwait, and right now they're a bit hesitant? Do you have an explanation why is that?
I think right now the Arab governments understand that there's so many civilians who are dying, there are so many children dying, and this is a very, very stupid issue to bomb a whole country and use military force just because of that issue, that we're not allowing them into, to inspect certain sites. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. If Israel would have been in the same boat, they would have been bombed so many more times because they have violated so many UN resolutions. So this is ridiculous.
Well, why I'm here? Because first of all, I'm an Arab and a Muslim and a Palestinian, so I know that we all should be against any kind of violence. I lived all my life in Palestine, and I never believed that people should kill each other for any reason, but anyway, sometimes it happens. But as I said, we are here to protest against the American policy because it's not a fair policy and it's a double standard policy, and they should not do anything to the Iraqi people, and they should just leave them alone. If they have a problem with Saddam Hussein, they can deal with him, they can do anything to him, in person or whatever. The American brother is strong and they can do anything they want, but just leave the Iraqi people alone, let them live.
How do you feel about American foreign policy toward the Middle East in general?
Well, it has never been fair, and it will never be fair.
Stop UN sanctions now! Stop UN sanctions now!
How do do you feel about the performance of Arab governments during this crisis?
Arab governments, fortunately, in the most recent event of the United States trying to pull another war against Iraq, have been really, really productive, has been really positive. Of course, unfortunately, that produced a Gulf War several years ago, and I really did not agree with most of what the Arab countries have done in that perspective, but I think that most of their positions right now, especially in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and all the other neighboring countries to Iraq, has been really favorable to all Arabs and Muslims in the world.
How do you see the coming years in the Middle East? Do you feel there's going to be an escalation of tension, or is it going to stay the way it is?
I mean, no one can tell you. That's $1 million question, but I really can't tell you. But I'm pretty scared about the events. I think if the U.S. Continues to basically, with this foreign policy against Muslims and Arabs, it's going to create a lot more hostility in the Middle East to Americans, and we don't want that to happen because I'm an American citizen myself. I hold my American passport. I go everywhere. I mean, I could be mistaken for any other American and be targeted, and that's not a really good thing to have as the United States as a foreign policy. So I think I'm really scared that something may happen if the U.S. continues such a policy in the future, and I hope that they would take a step back and think about it because the Arabs have been really huge investors in American government, American businesses, and I ask all the Arab nations to rethink also their policies towards the United States if this continues.
Sanctions make children die. Stop killing children now. Stop killing children now. Stop killing Iraqi children. Then get lost. Iraqi children. Stop killing Iraqi children. Bill Clinton, you should know. 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 U.S. sanctions must go. U.S. sanctions must go. U.S. sanctions must go. Half a million children dead. 3 million underfed. Half a million children dead. Half a million children dead. 3 million underfed. 3 million underfed. UN sanctions must go. UN sanctions must go. UN sanctions must go. UN sanctions must go. Half a million children dead. Half a million children dead. 3 million underfed. 3 million underfed.
Hi, could you tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit? I'm sorry.
You know, we're respecting your freedom of speech. No. That's all right. Come on.
We'll do you, then we'll do him.
Stick around, okay?
Hi, could you tell us your name, your background, and about this demonstration?
Sure. Sam Husseini. I'm with the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. I was born in Jordan and came here when I was very young, although my dad likes to say I was born in Palestine, since I was born in the Palestine Hospital in Amman, Jordan.
What is the significance of this demonstration today?
Well, I think it's an outpouring from the Arab American community as well as other Americans who think that the U.S. policy is, to put it kindly, very flawed. The U.S. policy of continuing the sanctions against the people of Iraq. The UNICEF figures on this are that 4,500 children are dying every month. That's 1 every 10 minutes. And that's totally unconscionable. It's hurting precisely the wrong people. They're talking about whether they'll have accurate weapons this time if they bomb Iraq. The sanctions are the most inaccurate weapon in terms of hurting innocent people. And bombing is totally illegitimate. They have no legal basis to do it. And if they bomb, as they're talking about bombing, the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the water facilities, the electric facilities, they will be heaping more suffering on the innocent Iraqi people.
What does the ADC plan to do next in order to raise up the protest against the possible bombing of Iraq?
Well, we are continuing to put out press releases on a fairly regular basis. We're continuing to go to the media and debating on things, various cable, MSNBC and Fox News Channel and so on. There will be a teach-in this coming Tuesday at the Cleveland Public Library, which is probably too late for when you're hearing this. And we're hoping to do a whole series of events. It's very difficult to plan these things out, obviously, because we don't know what the timeline of things are. And unfortunately, we started this in effect at our convention last June when we started the Iraq Task Force. We started focusing on this issue before the crisis that happened in November, saying that we wanted to lift the sanctions. And whether or not there's bombing, we're going to be continuing to address this issue and address the policy of the United States that's been murderous.
Is the ADC planning civil disobedience more obvious forms, more consistent and continuous forms of protest?
We don't have any plan. Can you hear me? We don't have any plans for civil disobedience. There was civil disobedience, I believe, this last Thursday in front of the White House by some religious groups, and I think they might do it again this coming Thursday at noon. So that's certainly in the cards, but we don't have any plans for that at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Saddam Hussein, I have one thing to say. You cannot defy the will of the world. We are determined to deny you the capacity to manufacture and deliver weapons of mass destruction.
Excuse me, sir. How do you feel about the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons and enough military power to defeat all the Arab countries combined 8 times?
You'll have to ask the president that.
How do you feel as an American citizen with your tax money in billions going to Israel every year?
You'll have to ask the president that.
Thank you, sir.
Children dying in your name. Children dying in your name. Children dying in your name. Children dying in your name.
See, these are in the street.
Why won't you know the capacity to manufacture or deliver weapons of mass Why won't deny you the capacity to manufacture or deliver weapons of mass destruction. We will deny you. We will deny you the capacity
What a way to start today.
to manufacture or deliver
got to go.
of mass destruction.
What do you think about the fact that several American troops are stationed right now in Saudi Arabia and the performance of Arab countries in general in this crisis?
I disagree that any American troop should be in Saudi Arabia or none. America is not in war. America is not war. But if they're going to bomb a country, every country Muslim, because they say that the benefit, our benefit, it means you're gonna kill a human being because you're gonna get oil. America has oil. We have oil in here in America. Why we cannot get it? Why they have to suffer? The American soldier, citizen like me, for what? For oil? And and America has oil. American public should wake up. This American policy is not right. So the public should wake up and do not hear Saddam Hussein. If America wants Saddam Hussein, they can pick him up like a feather, in a bird. Thank you very much.
Stop sanctions now! Stop sanctions now! U.S. sanctions must go! U.S. sanctions must go! U.S. sanctions must go!
Basically, we're here to give one simple message that we're absolutely against the bombing of Iraq. I think it's time to lift the sanctions. 1 million people have died so far. 5,000 kids are dying every month. Many countries have made mistakes in the past. Argentina, for example, have invaded the Falkland Islands. Their sanction was that they lost the war and they were kicked out. Here, they were punished. Iraq was punished. They lost the war and they continue the sanctions. We don't see any reason behind it, and we just simply want it to stop. I mean, we think there's a pattern here. They have sanctions against Iraq, partial sanctions against Syria, partial sanctions against Iran, sanctions against Libya, sanctions against Sudan, and I don't think this is the way for the future in which we can bridge gaps between our people. We want the sanctions to stop. We want the bombings to stop.
How do you see American foreign policy toward the Middle East in general?
Well, we know American foreign policy. I mean, we would have great relations. I mean, from day one, they have decided to support a state that was I mean, most of the problems in the Middle East we see is related one way or the other to the Arab-Israeli conflict. And until that is solved, nothing will happen. Until there's a resolution of the Palestinian and Israeli problem, the Americans and Arabs will continue to have problems, and their interests will definitely be against ours. So it's negative. It's not very good, and it will not lead to a friendly future.
How do you see the role of oil and the resources of the region in this conflict?
Well, their role is big. I mean, right now, it's estimated that if Iraq starts selling oil, the barrel of oil will go down to $12 a barrel. That could almost bankrupt Saudi Arabia and these countries. I don't think that's in U.S. policy for those countries to have those kind of problems. I think that's an additional pressure that most people don't realize. One of the reasons that most of the Gulf countries do not want the sanctions lifted is because right now there's 5 million more barrels per oil a day being pumped. And if they get Iraq in there, the market will just die out. And Saudi Arabia will lose about half of its income. So oil has a lot to do with it. And the U.S. having a permanent place in the Persian Gulf will definitely, to them, guarantee that the price of oil will stay cheap and a consistent flow of oil. So yeah, oil has a lot to do with it, of course. If there was no oil, I mean, for example, we have Somalia causes problems. We don't see anyone else going to do anything in Somalia. So oil is 99% of the key, and Israel is the rest factors.
How do you see the interests of the Saudi government in this conflict, and how do you evaluate their position during this crisis?
Well, I think that they have a dilemma. In one sense, they really do not want the sanctions to get lifted. And I think the reason is, a big part of the reason is that they know they will go into a serious economic depression if the sanctions are lifted, because the oil market is bad right now. It's the lowest it's been in 9 years, and if Iraq comes on. The second part, one other thing they're considering, that if they continue against Iraq, that their own people will cause problems for them. And the second factor, now they're beginning to consider the kind of hatred that the Iraqis will have for the Saudis in the long run. But despite that, we're still not hearing any strong voices from Saudi Arabia to lift the sanctions. So I think mainly for economic reasons, others maybe because of fear, they want the sanctions to stay right now. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for the fact that they have internal problems, they would have allowed the United States to bomb Iraq right now. But they have some dissent now, and that's causing them problems.
So you think the Saudi government is kind of unpopular these days?
In whose eyes?
In front of the eyes of its own people?
I think the odds of its own people are having problems right now. They do not like the idea. I mean, I've known many Saudis, and they tell me, well, here Israel violates every sanction, every UN resolution, nothing happens. And why is our government helping to destroy the only Arab government to actually be industrialized, to become industrialized? I've heard that from many Saudis, and many Saudis are actually upset with their governments, and I think this explains the bombing in Khobar. So yeah, I think slowly but surely that we're beginning for the first time in Saudi history to begin to see
seeing serious dissent. Yes, I don't think the Saudis are happy with the matter.
How do you see an overall solution for this crisis?
Oh, they must lift the sanctions. They have to lift the sanctions. I mean, the U.S. is saying, well, we won't lift it until we can guarantee the weapons of mass destruction are gone. However, the UN itself has said there's no nuclear weapons. They said out of 840 Scud missiles that Iraq had at one time, only 2 cannot be accounted for. Not that they have to, but 2 cannot be accounted for. They're not saying that they have biological and chemical weapons. All they're saying is that we don't know that they don't have them. So they want Iraq to prove a negative, which is impossible. And so the sanctions just must be lifted if they really want us to reach a point in life where we can actually have relations between Arab and Americans based on mutual respect. They have to lift the sanctions. They just have to.
Stop